go to Dre house. Now he like, that song you wrote, bust it for me again. So he put the first beat on, doom, doom, and I bust it. And he like, He grabbed a Leon Haywood record and spin that motherfucker back. Doom, He said, bust it off of this. He said, as soon as the turnaround started. 1, 2, 3 into the fours. And it was like, oh shit. That motherfucker was do-do-do-doom, 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 do-do-do-doom. And my lyrics was just like bouncing off of that shit, like bouncing. He was like, yeah, nigga, we doing it off of that.
In the 70s, a soul and funk journeyman reached the charts on a regular basis with tunes that tapped into rhythms and musical hooks of the day. This performer was a skilled songwriter and arranger who never attempted to be an innovator, and his songs are upbeat riffs on mid-tempo funk and love ballads from the 70s, genuinely accompanied by silky string arrangements. His greatest songs invoke the late 60s to early 70s MOTOWN sound, and his vocals, in particular, resemble those of Marvin Gaye. Leon Haywood is the centerpiece of today's video. Before we start, please be sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and push that notification bell to be sure you won't miss out on any more uploads. Now, without further ado, let's cue that intro. Author Leon Haywood was born in Houston, Texas on February 11th, 1942 to Evelyn Banks and Jim Haywood. He grew up listening to the blues and learning how to play the piano by the age of 3. Haywood's father sadly passed away when he was only 14 years old. He then decided to go ahead and pursue a career in music. He performed with local blues bands and accompanied blues musician Guitar Slim. Haywood relocated to Los Angeles in the early 60s where he collaborated with saxophonist Big J McNeely. McNeely took a liking to Haywood and arranged for him to record his debut song, Without a Love, which is an instrumental, under minor label Swingin' Records. After that, Haywood joined Sam Cooke's band as a keyboardist until Cooke's death. The Mellow Mellow Leon Haywood was his debut album that was published on Galaxy Records. He then signed with Fantasy Records where he released 2 singles. One was released on Fantasy Records and the other was released on Imperial Records. The single that was released on Imperial Records was She's With Her Other Love. In 1966, he released his second album called Soul Cargo under Fat Fish Records. That following year, he had a solid R&B hit with It's Got to Be Mellow.
She's crazy about me. Crazy about me. Yeah.
This was followed up by a small pop hit with Mellow Moonlight. That same year, he released his third album titled It's Got to Be Mellow under Decca Records. Haywood was part of 2-section bands that was organized by a LA DJ named Magnificent Montague. The first band was named The Packers, and they issued an instrumental in 1965 called Hole in the Wall. The second band was named The Romeos, and they released the single Precious Memories. In 1967, he did further studio sessions with the Packers and another band called Dyke and the Blazers. Haywood then went back to concentrate on his solo career. That same year, Haywood established a production company and named it Eve Jim after his parents. He then released 2 more singles that went unnoticed with Skate a While and Ain't No Use. It wasn't until the mid-70s that Haywood became into his own as a solo artist. During the early 70s, he signed to 20th Century Records, And by 1973, he released another album called Back to Stay. That next year, he had 4 charted singles with Keep It in the Family,
I'm in our home. We can solve it there.
Long As There's You, Sugar Lump,
Sugar love, you don't belong here.
and Believe Half of What You See.
Other minds mislead you. And that's not.
That same year, he released his 5th studio album titled Keep It in the Family. In 1975, Haywood released 2 singles with Come and Get Yourself Some
Come on and get yourself some. Don't be ashamed.
and I Want to Do Something Freaky to You.
I wanna do something freaky to you.
Now, this song was originally used as a sample for DR.DRE's song Nothing But a G Thing.
1, 2, 3 into the 4. Snoop Doggy Dogg and Dr. Dre is at the door.
This song was also used by 50 Cent for his song Corner Bodega,
Man, when I come up in here, treat me like a fam. I can go uptown and get this shit 16 cents a gram. Bottom line.
and Aaliyah's song I Got Your Back.
The women always wonder how I keep my man, baby.
In 1975, he released his 6th studio album titled Come and Get Yourself Some, which peaked at number 21 on the Billboard Top R&B Albums charts. That next year, Haywood released 2 albums with Intimate and Hey Mr. Big Ben, followed by 3 singles with Just Your Fool,
Just your fool, yeah.
Stroking, and The Streets Will Love You to Death.
And a family, but the grass look greener on the.
His stint at 20th Century Records ended by the end of 1976 and he joined Columbia Records. Now, his stay at Columbia was brief, but he later found himself signing with MCA Records. By the 70s, Haywood established himself as a star by adapting his technique to embrace the new funk and disco genres. In 1977, he released a single, Super Sexy.
Said, baby, you're a sexy thing. There's no one finer under the sun.
That next year, he released 3 charted singles with Double My Pleasure,
You're 12 strong signs, yeah. All over.
Party,
Let's party. We're gonna get on down. If you're
and Find a Healthy Thing.
healthy thing.
The remainder of the 70s, he released 2 albums with Double My Pleasure and Energy. In 1980, Haywood received the shuffle beat of the 50s rock and roll sound, and this line could really be heard on the single Don't Push It, Don't Force It. Ironically, this song was his only single to ever chart in the UK, which is why most people in the UK consider Haywood as a one-hit wonder. Throughout the remainder of the 80s, Haywood released singles such as If You're Looking for a Night of Fun, I'm Out to Catch, TV Mama,
Good in her designer jeans. She possesses beauty like a steel
and Tenderoni.
cutie pie. I beg for mercy each time she passes by.
In the 80s, he released 2 albums with Naturally in 1980 and It's Me Again in 1983. The next decade, in the 90s, he released 2 albums with Freaky Man in 1994 and The Legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in 1996. Haywood had times on many labels such as Casablanca Records, Modern Records, and his own imprint, Eve Jim Records, towards the conclusion of his career. During the 1980s, Haywood found himself returning to 20th Century Records, and at this time, Carl Carlton was suffering in his career, and after speaking with many musicians, Haywood was the only one who kept his word and helped Carlton earn a deal, this time with 20th Century Records. Haywood assisted in the writing and production of Carlton's biggest hit, She's a Bad Mama Jamma, which was recorded in Haywood's studio. By the mid-80s, Haywood's production had failed to grab the public interest, and he found himself working as an exclusive producer and executive for Edge Records, in addition to touring the popular circuits. Haywood produced blues albums for many musicians such as Jimmy McCracklin, Clay Hamron, Ronnie Lovejoy, Buddy Ace, and many others, all under his Eve Jim label. On April 5th, 2016, Haywood peacefully passed away in his sleep at the age of 74. Leon Haywood was an unappreciated vocalist who provided us with lovable songs that will be remembered for ages after a 3-decade career. His biggest success helped create the 90s hip-hop sound, and in some ways, it changed the sound of hip-hop music altogether. Haywood's top charted singles charted on a regular basis throughout the whole 70s, with tunes that tapped into the rhythms of our souls. Now I have a question for you guys before we head up out of here. What is your favorite Leon Haywood song? If you don't have a favorite, then what's your favorite song that he's either wrote or produced?